Alright, I'm going to go ahead and make a couple of videos tonight talking about the different subjects. I was just trying to post the introduction video to Facebook. Got a little frustrated with it, so let's go into a couple of subjects real quick this evening, and then I'll worry about all that other stuff. First thing I want to talk about, before we can do anything else in the government, we got to have money. Okay? And I don't mean we had to borrow the money to do what we're doing. Right now, this is the situation this country has. As of right this moment, the federal government takes in just over $3 trillion a year in taxes. That number is probably going to change a little bit with the new tax reduction that the Republicans just voted into play. But the government's budget, in other words, what we spend right now every year, is just around $3.9 trillion. So in other words, we're spending about $750 billion more per year than what we receive in income. That would be like you and I having a $3,000 a month paycheck, but we spend $3,800 a month to live our lives. Okay? First, we got to change that. We can't do health care reform. We can't do the border wall. We can't do Medicare reform, Social Security reform. We can't do anything if we don't have the money to do it with. The first thing I want to work on, my first priority in Congress, in the Senate, is going to be that. We need to balance the budget. We need to get our spending under control. Now, the great thing about what I want to do is it's going to do three problems at one time. It's going to balance the budget, increase the federal income, and it's going to blow the economy sky high. Okay? The Republicans and Donald Trump have lit a fire under the economy. And if you think about it, if you look in there objectively, you'll have to admit that. They have. The things, I mean, we got a stock market that's fixing crest over 26,000 right now. That's a number I don't think in my life anybody ever thought the stock market would ever get that high. I mean, I remember when it crossed 10,000 and like 6, 7, 8,000, everybody was going nuts about it back then. And when it breached 10,000, everybody's going, "Oh my gosh!" Look at it now. Everybody's like, they're falling out. They're like passing out. It's exuberantly high. Now that is good and bad. And the bad part that I see is, no matter what the economic outlook in this country is, can it stay on an increase? Is it going to just eventually just kind of plateau? Or is it going to fall backwards at some times? Throughout the history of this country, the economy, the stock market goes up, it kind of corrects itself and goes back down. I'd like to see it keep going up. One of the things that I would like to see is that under President Trump, for the first time in over 8 years, we've had in excess of a 3% GDP growth. Okay? It never even came close to that in the past 8 years. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I've even heard rumored, they're talking about, some of the economic experts are talking about this next year, 2018, of potentially breaching 4%. I'm curious about something. I've been on the internet trying to figure this out. You can't always find out what you want to do on the internet, okay? Trust me. Have we ever had a 5% GDP in this country? Have we ever had a 5% GDP growth? Whether it's for a month, a quarter. I know it's never happened for a whole year. Under the things that I'm planning on doing, I think we can breach a 5%. I don't care if it's done for a month. If it's never been done in history. Now, if you can find it in the history of us studying our economics in this country, that we have had at least a month of a 5% GDP growth, please put in my comments, Mark, when it was. I want to know. I think that would be a tremendous thing to know. Because like I said, I'd like to know if it has. I've looked on the internet. I can't find it. I can't figure out if it ever has happened. So, meat and potatoes. Going to eliminate federal income tax. Everybody's heads just exploded. Oh my God, you're going to do what? Okay. We're going to eliminate federal income tax. Do away with it completely. You will never pay federal income tax again. At least until some Democrat gets in there and decides they want to do it again. But you'll never pay federal income tax. If we eliminate federal income tax, that puts all of the money, that $3 trillion that's being taken out of the economy every year and given to the government to operate on, it gives it back to the economy. It keeps that $3 trillion per year in the economy. Now, with what little bit of stuff that you've seen on President Trump right now, what do you think's going to happen to the economy if we leave $3 trillion in people's pockets? It's not just individuals. I mean, that's businesses, everything. All right? Look at the bonuses. Look at the investments businesses have made just here in this past couple months since the tax cut has been put in play. Imagine if we gave all of the rest of that money back to them. What would these businesses do? This is what I see happening. You give a company all of their federal taxes back. You don't take anything away from them, let them keep it. Okay? Now, that's going to create job growth. One, I see it being an enticement to companies that left the United States to come back into the United States. Because now we got a 0% corporate tax rate. The lowest in the world. Why do they not want to come back? Additionally, I think it's going to entice foreign companies to want to invest in the United States. Again, the lowest tax rate in the world. It's going to create a job boom. Okay? Companies can do so much more with their money if they have it than what the government can do with it. So we'll eliminate federal income tax. Now everybody says, well, but the government's got to have money to operate on. Yes, it does. For the first 130 years of this country's existence, we didn't have a federal income tax. I believe 1913 was when the Tax Act was passed. And the government started taking money out of people's paychecks. Up until that time, we had a tariff, is what I was told it was called. Now, I haven't actually found out all the details of this. I haven't spent a lot of time looking this up. I know it was the way it was done. I just haven't looked for the details so that I can have all those stats and numbers and stuff to tell everybody. But I was told it was 23%. In other words, it was already included in the price of anything that you bought. So if you bought a gallon of milk, then the price, let's say, well, this was 150 years ago. So let's say 150 years ago. Let's say you paid $1 for a gallon of milk. Now, that would have been the whole cow at that time, but for sake of argument, then 23 cents of that dollar the business gave to the government because that was the tariff already figured into the price. And that was the income the government used to operate on. Basically, what I want to do is go back to that system, okay? It puts the entire $3 trillion in taxes that the government receives now back into the economy, which is going to make it grow like crazy. But what I want to do is implement a 20% federal sales tax. All right, and that means that whatever you buy, all the goods and services sold in the United States will be taxed at 20% rate. 20%, and I know some people think that sounds a little high, but 20% is what we have to have in order to do the things that we need to do. And it's not really that high, okay? And it's going to put benefit now. And I already know I've had some people say, well, it's going to hurt people. It's going to counteract the giving them their money back. It's not actually. I sit down, and when I came up with this, I've had this idea for about a couple years. I heard about the tariff, which we wasn't taught in school exactly how that was, at least. Okay, I don't remember. It's been that long. They might have brushed on it when I was in school, but it's been a long time, so I don't remember. but a friend of mine who's been dealt with politics for quite a long time was telling me about this a couple of years ago, and I got started thinking about it, looking into it, and also too, um, what really kind of stuck in my head, a consumption tax, was back in the 2011 and 12, I think it was 12. I was in the truck one day and I got satellite radio on the truck and I had it on Fox News. It was in the afternoon, and they were had somebody there talking about the budget, or talking about, yeah, the budget and the economy and stuff. And his idea, I don't remember who it was. I didn't catch the beginning of it. I just heard him discussing things, and he mentioned about adding in a 1.5 to 2% federal sales tax right now as things are. And his reasoning was, you've got 11, 12, 13 million illegal aliens in this country right now who don't pay tax. A lot of them work, they get money, it's under the table, they're not on payroll, so therefore they don't pay sales tax or income tax. But what do they do with that money? Well, they buy TVs, they buy clothes, they buy radios, cars, apartments, rent apartments. They spend the money. Well, if we had a federal sales tax, then when they spent that money, then they would be contributing to the government. So I sat down and started looking at, we need to do it some way or another that helps the American people with the taxes and the money that's taken out of their paychecks. I'll be honest with you, I hate paying taxes. And don't let these liberal freaking millionaires fool you and tell you raise my taxes like they did during the 2012 election cycle. All right, they're just as big of a hypocrite as anybody else. If they wanted the government to have more of their money, they wouldn't take all the tax credits and crap that they do to reduce their tax liability, and they could just write a paycheck, a freaking another check to the government for how much they think the government should take out of their have of their money. But they take every loophole they can find in order to pay less taxes. Unfortunately, those of us who are working class folks, we don't have those loopholes. So if we just eliminate federal income tax, you don't have to worry about it. Anyway, but with a consumption tax, then what happens is like I said, everybody contributes to the government in some way. So I sat down and started trying to figure out what would be a good tax plan. And the best thing that I come up with is what I'm talking to you about right now. Eliminate federal income tax and implement a 20% federal sales tax. Now, this is what I did. I took my paycheck. When I come up, figured out, I tried several different ways of figuring things, and I couldn't come up with what needed to be done. Where it helped. I couldn't figure out how to make the numbers work where it helped. Except this way. Now, what I did was I took my salary at the time, and I subtracted out my federal income tax, my Social Security, and my Medicare, as it is right now. And then since I get paid on a weekly basis, I multiplied it by 52 and divided by 12 to get my average net take-home pay, as it currently is. Then I took the last place I lived in an apartment. I took and this is how we need to do the federal budget. It's just like we do our homes. What do we have to pay? When we sit down every month at home or at a business, we look at what do we have to pay on the first of every month. You got rent or your mortgage, okay? You have your homeowner's insurance, car insurance, health insurance, whatever, okay? You got those things you have to pay. You got your utilities. You have to pay your electric. If you got natural gas, you got to pay your gas. You got to pay your phone bill. You're going to be without a phone, okay? You got to budget for your groceries for the month. So I sit down and took all of those things. My rent, my utilities, my phone bill. I just had internet service. I didn't have cable. My storage, because I have storage. I have to pay my storage every month or I lose what's there. And I took all of those things and I added them up. And then I subtracted them from my current net take-home pay to see how much money I had left over. That's called your discretionary spending. That's what the government calls it. So that's what we're going to call it here. That's our personal discretionary spending. Then I took my plan. I took my salary. Now, there will be a 5% Social Security Medicare tax. Not each, just a combined. Social Security Medicare tax, 5% of your paycheck. You'll contribute that to Social Security Medicare. Your company that you work for will contribute a 15% to Social Security Medicare. And that's the only payroll tax, any kind of tax like that the company's going to have to pay. Is strictly a 15% Social Security Medicare tax on their gross payroll. All right, and that's it. Then, so what I did was I took my gross salary minus my 5% Social Security tax and refigured my monthly net take-home pay. I increased my net take-home pay by just over $520 a month. Then I took those monthly expenses and I added 20% for the tax. It only raised my expenses $270 a month. I had a net take-home pay of an extra $250 a month that I got to keep, that I didn't have right now. Okay? What could I spend that extra $250 a month for? I mean, I got more money in my pocket now under that program, where I get to keep all of my paycheck. I pay 20% sales tax on everything. I got more money in my pocket than I do under any current tax plan that the government wants to give me. How's that a bad thing? Okay? Everybody, I tell you what, I tell you another example of this, and I did this with one of my managers. Last year we were talking about this, and I was talking about things I'd like to see done, and we got started talking about this. So what I did was I took her, and her husband worked for the company as well, but I just took her paycheck, and I did the same figures for her. I subtracted out her current income tax and stuff like that, and then took her current monthly bills, and then I redid it with a 20% income tax, sales tax added to her current bills, and no federal income tax taken out of her paycheck. She received an additional $1,000 a month under my plan versus what she's currently getting. That's just her paycheck. That don't include if we added her husband's in. And she has 5 kids. Okay? How much of a benefit would that extra $1,000, or probably with her husband included, probably $1,500 a month? How much would that help her and her family to have that additional $1,500 a month in their pockets versus what they have right now? Okay? Folks, you cannot lose with this program. To me, it's the best thing it's the best thing ever, period. And like I said, it's going to leave $3 trillion. Now, how's into the economy, which is, I think, is just going to make the economy explode. And if we don't reach a 5% GDP growth on that, we sure will get close. But anyway, now how's that benefit the government? Well, when you use a 20% federal sales tax, what that means is 20% of the total GDP for the year goes to the government for operating expenses. Our GDP currently, as of right now, the 1st of January of 2018, is about $18.6 trillion. 20% of that is $3.7 trillion, I believe. I looked it up the other day, I don't remember exactly. Wow, what do we just do? We just basically balanced the budget by changing the tax code. We're spending 3.9 trillion right now. By eliminating income tax, implementing a sales tax, we just basically balanced the budget within a couple $100, so to speak, of balancing the budget. Now, I said my plan is to do it in a way that we get a surplus. Well, this is something I'm definitely going to need President Trump's help on, because the cabinet's going to have to be involved in this, as well as other people. We need to restructure the federal government. Now, my ideas of doing it is based off of a military chain of command type thing. In the military, we have a thing called TO&E, Table of Organization and Equipment. And what that means is, it's like a little graph that tells you exactly how many people are in each position within the Marine Corps and what equipment those positions require. Okay? The whole service has it. Army, Navy, Air Force, they all have a TO&E. Okay? I would like to see a TO&E made up of the entire government. And I want to use the FBI in this case, because everybody can understand the process that I'm talking about when I use the FBI. What we do is we go to the FBI. Now, this is going to be every department in the government: the ATF, the entire Judicial Department, Department of Interior, Education, Health and Human Services. Every department is going to have to go do this, a ground up evaluation. First of all, like with the FBI, we'll say, how many field offices does the FBI have to do its job the way it's supposed to? Okay? Once we establish the places, those field offices, then we sit down and say, how many investigative teams does each office have to have? Obviously, some offices are going to have more personnel than others. Like, for example, the office in New York City is going to be tremendously more populated than, say, Cincinnati, Ohio. Okay? But that's what we need to do. We got to sit down and evaluate, do a bottoms-up evaluation, figure out how many offices they have to have, how many personnel in each office. Now, we need to set up and establish an investigative team. How many people's involved in that? You got a team leader. You have so many team members. Each office has an agent in charge and a deputy agent in charge. Then you have a state office who's in charge of all the field offices in that state. And they would have an agent in charge and a deputy agent in charge. Then you'd have like a region, like the Northeast, Southeast, Midwest, etc., who would have an agent in charge and a deputy agent in charge. And then you go straight to headquarters of the FBI. Okay? Now, if we sat and did this in every single organization in the government, every single department, you have some departments that's overpopulated. We have some departments that overlap jobs. So we'd sit there and determine which department that job went to. And it would consolidate them into that department. Now, if this department has 50 people doing that job, and this department has 50 people doing that job, but if you combine the two, it only takes 75 people to do it, then there's a way of savings. We're eliminating federal income tax. So the IRS, who currently has almost 100,000 employees, you're still going to have an IRS. You're going to have agents in every state to ensure that the correct monies are collected on the income tax and transferred to the Treasury Department. You're still going to have people that are tax exempt. Like, for example, I ran a paint and body shop. We're tax exempt when we buy a fender or a headlight or something like that to repair your car with, because we charge you tax on that part when it's added to your work order for your repairs. So if I had to pay tax on it, I would be marking up the tax and charging you for the markup on the tax and taxing that. You're taxing tax, double dipping, so to speak. So you'd still have to have some agents in every state to qualify those tax exempt purposes. Okay? But I think we should be able to drop the IRS employees down to, say, 10, 15,000 people maybe. All right? So I see that where we could probably cut 25% by doing a government-wide reorganization. I think we probably cut 25%. We'd obviously do inter-department transfers. This department's short of personnel. This department's over. We could transfer people over to staff them and stock them and all that stuff. Re-establish a new pay system. Okay? For example, the FBI, again, I'll use. When you come straight out of the academy and you go to your field office, you're a part of a field inspection team, investigative team. You're a basic investigator. Therefore, that's like, say, for example, we'll say that's a GS1, GS2 position. The team leader would be a GS3, GS4. The office agent in charge would be a GS5, GS6. The regional would be like a GS7, 8, and on up that way. And so, therefore, you wouldn't be like today in the FBI. You've got people who's been there for 20 years. They're making GS12, 13 pay. I don't know if they really are, but I'm just saying. But they're still doing the GS1 job. Okay. We need to do that restructure, and if you stay as in that basic investigator position your whole time, that's the pay scale, and that too is anti-discriminatory, because it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman or what color you are. Your paycheck, your pay rate is based off of your position. That's how we did it in my company. Detailer had this pay scale. If you wanted more money, you had to work and become a sander, then a taper, then a painter. As you moved up, your pay scale increased with you. Okay? if you come to work for me as a detailer and you're going to work for me for 10 years doing nothing but detailing cars, you're not making what the painter makes because you're not in that position. And so we implement something like that, government wide. And these are all things. It's going to be a fight for all of this, because one thing I'm doing in doing this is taking a lot of the stuff that people campaign on away from them. Where do they make money on their campaign? Where do they make money when they get to Washington with the lobbyists? Well, I'm eliminating a lot of that. But the other thing we can do in the government, when we do that, then we can recognize where we're wasting money at. And we're actually dedicating, and once you've got the whole department reorganized that way, then you sit down and say, okay, what equipment do they have to have? Once you've made sure the equipment is there, now you've got your budget for that department. It's not wasteful on money, because now we're budgeting for what we have or what we have to have. It's a lot simpler process. And so as you can start to maybe see, I see things in a simplistic manner. Take the freaking complication out of everything. Take all the legalese and all the BS out of it. And let's just get back to basics. Okay? You get back to basics, things are better. So if we do that throughout the whole government, that's why I feel if we do this. Now, we talked about the VA in my introduction video. I said I want to work on the VA. The VA is going to be a part of that. The restructuring, the evaluation, ground up evaluation is going to be in there. That's going to help the VA too. It's also going to help the Border Patrol in securing the southern border, because now they're going to be able to sit down and make a determination of what they need to do this with. And then we can budget all of that out of the $3.7 trillion instead of $3 trillion, the 3.2 that we get now. I think if we do this correctly, I believe we can get the federal budget as close to $3 trillion as possible, which is going to leave in the first year, not over 10 years like politicians like to talk about, but on the first annual basis, the first year's budget, I think we can have about $500 billion left over as a surplus. Now, part of my tax plan is that it's going to be mandatory that a minimum of 50% of every surplus goes to pay on the national debt. Okay? That's going to be mandatory. So if we have $500 billion left over in surplus, $250 goes to pay the national debt. Now, I had somebody at one of the Central Committee meetings the other night asked me about the off-the-record stuff, like the money that the Congress is borrowing from Social Security and all this other stuff, and what the true debt for this country truly is well over $20 trillion. And like I told him, under this plan, he asked me would I support a end to the additional borrowing besides what just goes into the national debt. And like I told him, if we have a balanced budget and a surplus, why do we need to borrow money from anything? As a matter of fact, with the surplus, we can start putting money back into Social Security. But it's not just as necessarily as putting money back into it for the money that was drawn out. It's the fact that each year we sit down and part of the federal budget is determining the amount of money we need in Social Security as a part of that $3 trillion budget. Social Security payments are into that already. Okay? That's why we don't need to borrow no more money. And Social Security will be solid, liquid, and won't be running out of money anytime soon. Medicare will be restructured so that it's more efficient and it costs less money, and it's not going to have to. We're not going to have to worry about things. I think we do need, and I'm going to sit down in a video and discuss Medicare and Social Security and stuff, and what needs to be done with that. But this is the basics of what I want everybody to understand tonight: is how we're going to balance the budget and start paying off the national debt. Now, the one thing you say, well, what are we going to do with the other half of the surplus? Okay. This year was a big example of what I would like to do with it. And I've thought about this. What are we going to do with the extra surplus? Well, we need a rainy day fund, emergency management fund. And what I did was I sat down and I looked up Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Andrew and Superstorm Sandy. What was the total cost of those hurricanes? Not just what the government spent to go in there and rescue people and all that stuff, but the rebuilding and the total cost of those three natural disasters. And I added them up, and I think they come up to around $350-400 billion. So I decided that I sat down and thought about it. So we need a $500 billion rainy day fund, emergency management fund. And this year was the perfect example of why we need that much money. We had Harvey, then we had Irma, then we had Maria, we had the fires out west, we've had the freaking snowstorms and stuff so far this winter. We've had some serious natural disasters. And just after Harvey, before Irma even hit, the FEMA was hurting for money. Harvey was so expensive on FEMA that FEMA had to go back and say, hey, government, we need more money. So, and Congress had actually approved the borrowing of additional costs, increasing the national debt, just to help cover the cost of those storms. If we had that $500 billion rainy day fund set off to the side, we wouldn't have to worry about that. I believe $500 billion would be enough. Unless we had all three of those storms doubled. We had 6 of those storms in the year. Okay, if that's the case, I'm starting to watch the eastern sky. But some of you all understand that comment. But anyway, if we had that, then what we can do is each year, when we do the budget, we look at, once we have, so we got $500 billion in there. And then, of course, next year we're going to use probably some of it. So we reconstitute it. But we keep putting all the extra surplus into that until we reach the $500 billion mark. That's our goal. Then what we do is each year we look at how much of that money do we spend last year. We take that out of the surplus, reconstitute the emergency management fund, and the entire remaining balance of the surplus goes to the national debt. And what this does, it means, is over time, the amount paid on the debt is going to increase as the GDP grows. When the GDP hits $20 trillion, then the federal income is going to be $4 trillion. In the future, 10 years from now, whatever it is, 15, when the GDP hits $25 trillion, then the government's income is going to be $5 trillion. But if we maintain our fiscal responsibility with our budget and don't go hog wild, we can start adding as each year goes on and the GDP grows, we can add, instead of $500 billion, we can go $750 billion. And eventually get to the point where we got a whole $1 trillion a year going into the national debt. Under that concept, I believe that we should be able to pay off the national debt completely. The United States is out of debt in 25 to 30 years. Folks, I've never ever heard anybody talk about stuff like that. I don't think anybody's even tried to even come up with an idea to do something like that. That's why in my introduction video I said we need to start getting people that's not a part of the establishment. People that are outside the box. And I know a lot of people's going to say, but Tim, you can't do that. People ain't going to want to do that. If the people of Ohio put me in the Senate, we're going to do it. Because they put me there for that reason. Just like President Trump right now is trying to do the things he's doing. Because we, the people, put him there to do those things. And he is trying to do everything he said he wanted to do. And I think that's what, if the people of Ohio, if you put me in Senate, I'm going to do the same thing he's doing right now. I am going to fight and scratch and do everything I can possibly do, just like he is, to do those things that I say. Because that's why you put me there. And that's why I'm asking to go. Because I've never in my life heard of anybody talk about doing the things that I'm talking about doing. And neither have you. But all it takes is one person to stand up and say, let's do this. And fight for it to happen. And that's why I say, too, through this campaign, up until November, I'm hoping that some of this message gets spread into the Republican Party nationwide. I guarantee you that as it goes, if we can make this video go viral and get people talking about it, and it gets into Fox News and CNN, and it gets spread all over the country, you're going to hear politicians talking about wanting to do this. If you sit down and crunch the numbers the way I just told you earlier in the video, go back and start it over and listen to how I told you to do it. Look at how much extra money you're going to have in your pocket. Is it worth it? I think it is. But more importantly, what kind of a future we leave in our children and grandchildren? I have an 8-year-old, great, wonderful 8-year-old granddaughter. What kind of a future am I leaving her if I don't try to do this? You got to try. And I ask you to help me. Again, sit down and crunch the numbers. In the comments box, whatever, tell me what you think. You don't have to tell me how much you're going to gain. Just tell me, hey, dude, that helps. I love it. If you disagree with me, tell me that too. I can take constructive criticism. I'm a Marine. All right? You can't insult me. You can only insult someone who's willing to be insulted. You can try, and I know there's liberals out there that's going to try to freaking insult me. I want to sit there and smile at you. Okay? Let's work together. Let's get me in the Senate. Let's tell everybody in Ohio about this. And let's get me in the Senate, folks, so I can at least try to do this, because this is what I want to do. This is a passion. I'm not going there to be anything other than work. I want to go there and do these things. All right? Stay tuned for more information on other stuff. But let's make this happen. Let's turn Washington up on its ear. Let's yank a knot in these politicians' tails. Okay, I think that's an old saying. I think my great grandmother had that one. I hope I got it close. So, thank you this evening, folks, for listening and watching. Godspeed, and let's put this video out there and let's make this one go viral. Thank you.